All right, everyone, welcome to Headspace Live. We are back online with my buddy Brandon
Back.
Nicely in the house. And today we have a few talking points that are going to be interesting. As always, it's unfiltered, uncut, completely unedited, live, whatever. What you get is what you get. So today we're talking about how to avoid getting stuck, how to recalibrate and retool, and how to go higher, further, and faster. These are topics I think that are just ever present and important. We have a bunch of illustrations, practicals, and personal stories. If you're ready, we're ready. Here we go. Leave us your comments if you're live in the comment section, or if you're not, just leave us your comments anyway. We try to answer every single one of them. All right. So, Brandon, my friend Brandon, you have a lot of life behind you. So do I, and that makes
That's
us.
an interesting spin right there.
It is
All right. Yeah.
it's a
On
positive.
age.
It's a
Yeah.
positive. It's not age. Experience. So
Experience.
I just came back from a leadership conference. Spent a week there, and it was just so cool. Lots of amazing people doing amazing stuff. But what I found, because obviously I'm sort of looking at a lot of this stuff now through sort of the exponential life lens of how do we get people to flourish and so that their mission in life can flourish, right? So I've
Hmm.
had all these interesting conversations, and what I found is that even incredibly gifted, incredibly successful people get stuck. And I guess my question to you is like as the first discussion point is, how do you avoid getting stuck in the first place? Because I think that's the one thing that we don't do well. Like we just don't notice, right? So I have a few thoughts. I'm sure you have a bunch of thoughts as well, and maybe share some stories of what not to do, and then we'll move on to the next thing.
So let's talk, just frame a little bit what you mean by being stuck. Is it
Okay.
personal? Like, is this personal or is this like in your workplace or in your career? We
I
want to talk
think
about.
I think they correlate, in my opinion, right? And it can start. I think it starts in one area. You can be, for example, you can be doing really well in your career, and then the company changes, the team changes, results start getting soggy and weird, and it influences your personal life as well. But it's actually vice versa as well. If you're not doing well at
Yeah.
home, it can really overflow into the workspace. So I think of it more of as an integrated picture. And what I guess more specifically, what I'm looking for is it's. I think here's the problem. I think it's a slow process, right? That sort of the plateau is not like the sudden plateau most of the time. It's just this slow. It's a slowing down, and you get a little disoriented, and then you next thing you know, you're going, what is up, right? And then it's just not one thing, and that's what makes this tricky because you don't know when you're stuck precisely until later. And I think a lot can be gained from going have an early awareness of it. And I guess the question is specifically, how do you get early awareness, early signals? What are the signals? How do you get those signals? Uh,
Where's the
I,
feedback?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a golden, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
honestly it can save you years
Years.
of unnecessary pain, right?
I mean, I
So
have to, there's so many stories, but I think that to your point, I think they're out of phase a little bit. Like sometimes things, for example, for me, when the telecom meltdown happened in 2000, 2001, I mean, that was a macro, event that may or, that had nothing to do with my internal world, right?
yeah,
However, that major tidal wave professionally definitely affected my personal life,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And so, but not right away. They're like, I would say they're just slightly out of phase with each other,
hmm
because there's sort of a point where you have denial. Like
Yeah.
you say, I
Yeah.
was on top of the mountain, and then there's this period of time when you're like, well, things are going to get back to normal, right? And we're just taking a little bleep. And so,
Always,
this is a
always denial.
little
Yeah. Yeah.
cycle of time,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
where, and that's kind of when you talk about early signals, that's kind of hard to detect. I think it depends on your sensitivity to change, right?
I think
Um,
so too.
I mean, if you're a government worker, day in, day out, toll taker, I mean, your life may not change that much as it relates to the macroeconomic environment. But if you're in the
Yeah.
entrepreneurial world, you're building things and you're in a place that has a lot of volatility, then
Mm-hmm.
certainly. And so I think it's down to the individual in terms of your sensitivity as to when things are changing, right? And I think that for me, just that one situation, that's one of the first thing that pops in my mind, led to, for example, me deciding to leave the company that I built.
Mm-hmm.
And just because if I took myself off the books, meaning that I could save like about 10 jobs, right? I mean, so the idea was I was a high paid person, and that was the idea. I cared enough about my people that I wanted to like make it better for them. And I knew that the sort of tide was lowering, and there's no
Mm-hmm.
way that we could sustainably keep everyone. But now I find myself at home trying to decide what's next, right? So I'm sitting
Mm-hmm.
around in my COVID. If you think about it, like it wasn't
Yeah.
COVID, but we say in the old days boxer shorts or whatever, your pajamas or whatever it is, your comfy clothes.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You're trying to figure out how can I build the next thing and what is it that I want to do next, right? So in
Yeah.
these times of transitions, I think it's a good question. When do you get external help, or when are you just sort of navigating,
When do you get the signal even in the first place, and
yeah,
how do you gauge, hey, I need
yeah,
to pivot significantly? And I think to your point, the the change can come from the outside, right? For example, the meltdown of the .com. The change can come from the inside. For example, for me, I was like doing really well professionally, but my personal life was like just clunky, and I sort of ignored it until I couldn't ignore it anymore. It also can come slowly, and I think that's the trickiest thing, where you start realizing you know, I think the first sign, and here's maybe my first tip: when you start losing joy, that is a signal. When you're just don't not excited to get up in the morning, you go, it's just there's this overall sort of dark cloud, and I think most of us don't respond to a signal like lack of joy because we have sort of maybe we didn't have a lot of joy in our environment in the first place. We don't consider that as an essential. I think it's an essential, right? And it's a signal that you're aligned, and also it's a signal that you're making progress. The other thing I think is relationships. When relationships are harmonious, it almost signals that you're in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. When things start getting clunky, with your coworkers, your partners, perhaps at home with your spouse, you start disconnected from the kids, and you're not present, all of that, that's another signal in my mind. Anything else on your end?
yeah. That's what I was going to say. Was like I went from that place of being on top, managing a lot of people, to being at home in front of a computer, sort of zoned out,
Yeah.
and grinding. Like, what's the
Mm-hmm.
next thing? What's the next thing? And I might look at a thing, then look at another thing, and look at another thing. And so there was this period of, I'm going to say, probably 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how long that's why my signal wasn't very tuned, I don't think.
Right.
Um, my receiver wasn't tuned to the signals that I think you're talking about. But ultimately, I spent a couple of years, and then what that started to do was affect my personal relationships, right? My romantic relationship, because I was just not in a happy place, to your point, right? And so I was grinding, trying to figure out, and you start working, then you start looking at 10 different things at the same time, and you're
Yeah, that's right.
the stress level goes up, and you don't even really realize it because I think you've been, like, for example, as an entrepreneur, you're conditioned to work pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the first signal from me would be that your wife starts looking at you a little funny. What are you doing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it's the relationships around you are key. And I think that's where you said the relational construct. Because if I'd seen that a little bit earlier, I would have saved a
Right.
lot of time and energy. But it ended up leading to a denigration, or really, sort of a downward trend in my relationship. And then that led to, making some decisions, new opportunities that came by that were, it was funny how your career can sometimes be a leading indicator of your personal happiness if they're too attached,
That's
right?
right. Yeah. If you are
Yeah.
your you are your job, basically,
Yeah,
right?
because then if things are going well, you feel great. But if things are
Yeah.
not going well, you don't feel great. But over a period of time, I think there's two things. One, to your point, is have some level of self-assessment, right?
Yeah.
And I think that having a group like you're in, when you're some group of guys that are women or people that are actually around you and they'll be willing to sort of do the take
Yeah, that's right.
the litmus test, right? Be able to take
Hmm.
an assessment. I think that's really helpful to have a regular rhythm of people that
Yeah.
can ask you those
Hmm.
questions. But the second thing is, I think that there's significant changes in your personal relationships,
Yeah.
right?
I
And when
I I was talking to someone last week, sort of about this, and the gentleman who was an incredible leader, very successful, and he said, what do you do with perfectionism? And that was a question that came, I think, from a very heart level. And my take on it, I said, I think perfectionism is clouded dissatisfaction. It's not really your desire to see everything perfect. It's almost like a crutch to complain in a positive way, saying, yeah, man, I want to reach higher. I think it's one of those signs that you need to see, is this sort of what is shrouded as perfectionism is actually dissatisfaction, lack of progress, that sort of thing.
yeah,
And it comes with the irritability, inevitably, right? You're irritable, you're dissatisfied, you're really not fun to be around in that situation.
yeah,
And
can
that
actually also shroud insecurity,
Yes, I think so too. Yeah.
right? Where people are,
Yeah.
why? The question is, why do you have to be perfect?
Yeah, there's no such thing as perfection, obviously, right?
But
So
for yourself, you're looking in the mirror and you're saying, "Hey, I have to be perfect because I'm driven from some place of
yeah,
unhealthiness," right?
usually, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think so too. And that can really backfire when you want to, in everything, in marriage, in friendship. It can backfire if you want to lead a team somewhere. You're not going to retain talented and gifted people because you are not fun to be around. And people leave don't people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses, so I heard that somewhere, and I think that's very true.
Hmm.
um okay, so let's talk about the second thing. We're talk obviously connected to the first thing, is how do you recalibrate and retool. And I was really interested when I was sort of writing this out, thinking about this episode, on addressing this from two levels: micro retooling, micro recalibrating, and macro, right? Big shifts in life, whatever, changes in seasons, changes of careers, all of that stuff. Let's talk about the micro a little bit, because you and I are really like we're very intentional about the micro, both of us are, and how maybe share a little bit about how that helped us. And I mean, obviously, by that, Sabbathing, taking breaks, going to conferences and webinars to sort of broaden your perspective, retreats, vacations, basically creating sort of this space for an empty space that can be filled with something new, rather than you're always essentially catching up and never caught up with things, right? So there's no room for creativity, there's no room for learning, there's no room for expanding your horizons. And on the micro level, you can really actually recalibrate and retool on the go if you figure out some of those things that you and I talk about all the time.
Yeah, there's so much there.
Right? Yeah. Let's talk about the
Yeah,
micro then.
the micro. I mean, that has to do. Starts for me with instrumentation. Like I get up in the morning. The first thing I do is look at my sleep app.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
and really think about, did I go to sleep at a good time? Did I, did I have quality sleep? What caused me to have less than quality sleep last
That's
night? So it's
huge.
this
That's
sort of
huge.
instrumentation that I have right around, I don't call it biohacking or whatever you were doing, that's using data to kind of determine what's going on. And
Hmm.
then for me, for example, at the very micro level, if I felt bad this morning, I didn't feel great. If like everything felt a little creaky, right? I'm like, this is
Hmm.
not right. And so I went over to Eddie's actually, and we cold plunged together.
Uh-huh. That's
and
awesome. Yeah. So
yeah,
that's a recalibrating move,
it
100%,
is.
right? Cold
I was
plunging.
not feeling great. I could have powered through, right? But I'm like, he texted me. I'm like, I'm there, and then
That's awesome.
honestly, 30 minutes later, I felt great. I went to the
Uh-huh.
gym, worked out. This is early this morning, right?
Yeah.
And saw some friends of mine in the gym, and it was great. And then I cranked through the morning. So I think to that point of there's a need to have those relationships. I would have never done that had I had a friend that I had actually enrolled originally in some of these micro
Yeah.
sort of elements
Recalibrating. Yeah.
calibrating yourself, right?
Hmm.
And so you need some instrumentation, you need some awareness, I think, grab your body and then what's going on there. But then on the little bit above micro and so heading towards macro, you have things like rhythms of the week that I learned a lot from you, like the practicing of Sabbath. I kind of did it, but you took it to another level, and
Yeah, we challenge each other. That's sort of the relational part, right? So you're like one of the few people that took to it, because I say it to everyone. I like preach that, and
mhm.
then very few people actually take it seriously, because I basically say, look, you have to just stop and do nothing and have complete delight, and you
Yeah.
stop dieting, you start feasting, you delight in your wife, you do nothing, you just rest, 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 rest,
Yeah.
rest. None of that, I'll mow the lawn and do something, that I usually don't do
Well,
during
this
the
has to
week.
get done, or that
Yeah,
has to get done,
and
right?
there's an exception that you make because of blah
Yeah.
blah blah.
Yeah.
There are a few exceptions, but we call it the donkey in the well sort of syndrome, right?
Yeah.
When I say that to people, people just cannot, like, they just can't even wrap their minds around it. But what I'm
Mm-mm.
telling them is that is the superpower, is that you have such complete rest and restoration and recalibrating that you explode into the next week with creativity and energy and joy. And the cool thing, I love that you took to it, because now, like, if I'm compromising, you call me out on that. You go, "Hey, wait a minute, what's going on here with the Sabbath?"
Well,
Uh,
yeah, I'm very jealous for my Sabbath now. I'm like, I don't want to even get with other people.
I know, yeah, I've
I have
noticed
no
that.
interest. Like, I know it can be a social thing, but I'm like, no events, not even like even Saturday night. I'm like, oh, we get with other people, but I'm always a little bit like, how early are we going to do it? Make sure there's enough, time that
That's
we've had in
awesome.
the day to rest in it.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, it's countercultural thing I think that I've adopted
Hmm.
over the last 10 years being around you.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a way of life because you think about it. Most people have families, especially young kids, and in school age kids. They're running around like super mom, super dad, and Saturday
Hmm.
is the busiest day of the week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But imagine where you could spend time with your family all day long intentionally and say no to some of those things. And guess what? You might miss a few things, but the relational dynamic and what you're teaching your kids is such a life
My gosh. Oh,
quality
yeah.
principle, right?
And
And
by
you've
the
done
way, if
that
this,
with your kids, right? So
yeah, oh, totally. And if you're watching this either live or later, uh, seriously, ask questions, lean into this. Leave us some comments, because
try it for 1 month, four
try it from,
weeks.
yeah,
Just
I know,
try it.
yeah. And
And
for
you'll be
us,
like,
okay,
oh, how did I do this before?
some of the rules of thumb that we had when the kids were in the house, that they're like out of the house, and it's so much easier to Sabbath, obviously. So, but some of the we were like, okay, we're gonna do maximum two things for between them and us. Let's say, and it's all Sabbath related for us. So like, we only can get with people who, it's not for work. We're just hanging out, and it's just a complete delight and a joy. That's a source of joy. That's the principle. So we would get with someone. Let's
So
say
no projects.
no projects at all. Nope. No, no, no. And then for the kids, they could have like one thing, like a recital, and they needed a ride for a teen event or something. That's fine. But beyond one of those things, it's now work. So we basically drew the line, and we're like, look, get a ride. I don't care. Good luck. And and but also they learned from us just by
Sure.
observing that we're
It's
just,
priority.
yeah, and they learned by observing that we are so happy when we do that. And we also don't do any chores at all, right? So, and they had chores when they were in the house, and one of them was dishes, and they worked the system because they were supposed to do the chores every day. So they like would quote unquote forget on Friday, and then Saturday's off the table. So they would like, we were like, okay, I guess you work the system. You're not gonna do, we're not gonna do dishes, and they loved that. They loved that. So they did learn just from observing just how much we gained from Sabbathing and breaks. The other thing I wanted to sort of share is, recalibrating is not just doing nothing. Recalibrating is expanding and learning. And to
But before
me,
you go, can I make one more comment about the
yeah,
Sabbath?
yeah,
Because I've heard this a couple times recently. I'm hearing people that are talking about how burnt out they are.
right, yeah, a lot more than
That,
50% of the
but I
population in the
think
United
we've
States.
learned to live with burnout.
Oh, it's glorified.
And the way that we actually manage it is with alcohol or wine every night before we go to bed,
Totally.
which tears up your sleep, which is
Escape,
counterproductive. So
escapist
it's
behavior. Yeah.
I'm hearing that you and I were in a similar meeting where where these young people talking about burnout,
Hmm.
right? People that are
Oh,
burned out, and I'm just like, how do you get to a place of burnout? I can't experience. I honestly can't relate to it anymore, and I
yeah.
think it's because of the one thing.
Hmm.
It's that taking the time. I mean, just obeying God. I mean, it was His plan that He took a day after creating to rest, and
Yeah.
it's like we think we're above it. Like we almost there's so much uh, we have so much we think we know better,
Oh,
and
it's
ultimately that is the
pride.
source
Yeah. Yeah.
of our inability to. And this is a big arc conversation we won't get into, but the
Yeah.
things that God tells you to do are actually good for you.
Okay,
They're not.
it's the one commandment of the 10 commandments that is actually fun, and we don't obey that one. And I think it's because of the idolatry of work, idolatry of productivity, greed.
It's
And
conditioning. I think we're just
yeah,
conditioned. It's
yeah,
normal,
absolutely. Yeah,
and
it
it's not
really
until
is.
somebody says this is not normal.
Yeah. Like you're like
You're
in a
like,
clinical
what?
depression by the time you go, oh, maybe I should change something. So
Yeah, there's so many reasons for burnout,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So many reasons. Could be family, can be job, can be too much Netflix. It can be, well, there's so many things that contribute to this underperformance, right?
yeah,
Or how
yeah.
you feel. And that what I illustrated this morning was, well, how do you turn it around, right? And you have to keep thinking about what it, like I used to love, a drink at night, maybe a little glass of whiskey or a port or something, and I
Hmm.
just realized that that was really affecting my sleep more than I expected, more than I knew.
Brandon, you've touched upon something that I feel the same way. Once you start fine tuning your performance and your state of being, and you're basically your baseline goes from when you just can't discern what's messing with you to high tuned, excited flow, creativity, high performance. You can see the future. You have all kinds of stuff going on. Once you're in that baseline state where, like, at the very least, 5, 6 out of 7 days, you're in that state of high performance. Now you start noticing nuance, right?
Yeah.
A glass of wine was nothing
No,
until it messes with your flow, right? So
exactly.
yeah. That's
It's
exactly
really
it.
a
Yeah,
tuning thing, right? But it's
yeah.
such a, you think about how many people you know who have to have a glass of wine or maybe two. Usually it's not one.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
usually two. Maybe
yeah.
it's a bottle. I know people who, and it's just, and I've seen this. I think the more you start to dial in, the more you see it around you,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
And it's
It's like a
it's
race
really
car.
interesting.
Like when you see like five people on the F1 car, it's this fine-tuned performance machine, right? Everything matters. And then you're driving like this, 11-year-old, 15-year-old Toyota, nothing really matters. Like as long as it takes you from point A to point B. But honestly, that's a good illustration because
It
look,
is, yeah.
if you want to treat yourself as a 15-year-old Toyota that takes you from paycheck to paycheck, right? From Saturday to Saturday. Thank God it's Friday because I'm gonna like do nothing, or veg out in front of the TV. That is just a very to me that's not a life that I want to live.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to live a life of that matters. I want more than income. I want impact. I want significance. And if you want to get there, you have to fine tune your instrument, basically,
Yeah.
right?
I
So
don't think people are going to believe us, honestly. They're going to be like, I listen to this, like, nah, I can't believe it because they're so used to it. But
yeah,
I challenge you to take this exponential course. It'll make you look at your life and think
right,
about things that you
yeah.
haven't
Well,
thought about.
thanks
And
for the
so it's
plug.
like you and I both drive performance vehicles, right?
We
We,
do.
we
That is true.
like, we
That is true.
like the drive.
We
It's
do.
like we have third drive. I
Yeah,
mean, we
that's true.
like
Yeah,
we like the drive being a high performance experience. It's kind of a good metaphor for life, right? I think you just hit on it.
Yeah, somebody I was sort of pulling out of church, and somebody was like, you seem to like, German cars, and because I have an Audi, you have a Beamer, I have an Audi. We have this picture of like it's like the family, right? A Beamer and an Audi next, silver, both silver. And I remember, and for the longest time, I would be like, well, you're
I
gonna
would
think
have black if it weren't for Texas heat. I'm
that's
just
true.
saying,
That's true. Yeah.
but that's why we have
for
silver running
for the
here.
longest time, I would not get anything like it because I was like, well, people are gonna think I'm vain and blah blah blah. I'm not showing off, but I'm
Hmm.
actually not showing off. I really don't. And the thing is, I can get an Audi, a slightly older Audi, um, for the same price as a brand new whatever, Toyota, Rav4.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's not really a price point preference, it's a
No, no,
performance preference, right? It
yeah.
just feels
It's a
differently.
quality of life issue is all it is. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
and you can have like older ones to your point. To me, I measure it on how much does it depreciate in a year, right? And what's the
Uh-huh.
total cost of ownership? If you look at that, then it's actually there's an optimal point of doing it. So anyway,
Yeah.
neither you nor I are rich per se, right? Like, we're not,
No, no, of course not.
we've dialed in, I think, this lifestyle, which I appreciate. I think that so back to your, kind of instrumentation.
Uh-huh.
I think that it's takes thoughtful consideration to have a well balanced
Yeah, that's true.
tuning. So I think I'm gonna give you another sort of thing here with your program. You have 7 different sort of vectors by which you're
Hmm.
dialing in the tuning. His faith, family, force, a couple others, finances, and a couple.
Hmm.
So, but the point is that in that sort of, to me, that's really interesting because it's easy for me to perform well, maybe even in my faith, or maybe in my finances, or maybe in my force, but I could mess up family and I could mess up the
Yeah.
other things, right? Friendships. And so it's really interesting to think about how do you get proactive in building a good life, right?
Yeah, I think yeah. And thank you for the plug. And by the way, guys, this is not like an ad
It's not,
for exponential
no,
at all. I do
it's just
have.
true.
Yeah, exactly. It's just true. And I want to, this is actually, will feed into it. I was going to mention it later, but I'm going to put a banner up. This is the link to a new assessment. It's called the exponential score, that basically helps you answer, you can probably complete it in about, 7 minutes, 5 minutes, depending on how long you take to think about it. And it's called the exponential score. And it gives you this really granular look at the different dimensionality of life. So it's the 7 and plus a few others. So it's like 11 different dimensions that are sort of very important, all of them. And what I love doing is once people take those scores and they want to talk to me, I can talk to them with specifics, not just generalities. And it's you'll be surprised, Brandon. It's been actually quite enlightening when you start looking at how, let's say, people
Hmm.
that are people of faith, spiritual, they can have like their spiritual score super high, and then everything else like in the red. And to me, I've had more than
That's
one
not good.
meaningful, yeah, one more than one meaningful conversation to. So, do you really think your spiritual life is that good if it doesn't affect your real life? And that is a very and they, I mean, I'm not telling them, they're saying that about themselves, right? So it
Yeah.
really serves to recalibrate, to sort of avoid getting stuck. That's the
Yeah.
instrumentation right there.
It's just
And
like a
then you
performance vehicle. You need to have the lights
exactly,
need to work, your tire pressure needs to be there, your engine oil needs to have. I
exactly.
mean, you need to have some dimensionality to your visual
Yeah,
inspections, right?
yeah, that's exactly it. And I just love the exponential score. I highly recommend that you take it if you haven't yet, because it's going to give you a really good picture of your life that then you have to just decide what are you going to do about this, right?
Hmm.
And some people, some people it's getting out of the red. Like there's a lot of red, you need to get to a lot of more greens. And some people actually they're very much in the green and they have a couple of spots. So for some people this is just a leveling up effort. But regardless of where your starting point is, it's where you're going with it, and I think that's a big thing. So let's talk about macro retooling. This is, I think, an important piece for those of us who sometimes it's burnout, sometimes it's there's a tectonic shift in life career, marketplace, perhaps season of life where you're going, you know what, this is a new season. I have to, take a step back or two steps back. So I'm gonna share some of my stories. I think you've had some of that as well. I remember when we met, I was sort of using this metaphor. Brandon, you are one of the most talented people I know. But if you want to fly higher, first you need to go deeper, and then you'll fly higher, which feels counterintuitive when you're in it, but actually makes a lot of sense. And to me, that was very, very similar. Where I had a season in my 40s, actually, like clockwork, like midlife crisis level stuff. And I say crisis in the most positive way. I think we all go through two or three in a lifetime, major crises, and they're opportunities to recalibrate. My friend, the author of Loving Midlife, calls it the midlife chrysalis. Like the caterpillar will become a butterfly. The chrysalis is the process to do that. And for me, it took about the big one in the midlife season took about 3 years, approximately. It's not an exact science, but to me, I took long extended periods of time to like dive into recalibrate something major. So for example, I recalibrated my spiritual practices, and it took me a long time. It took me like a year to learn how to Sabbath, for example, right? I'm very much, I was like, you know what, I need supernatural. I have a lot of practical leans, but the supernatural is not natural to me. So I'm going to learn how to pray, right? And I remember like E.M. Bounds' Complete Works of Prayer, like this guy E.M. Bounds, he writes very densely, and I still have it on my shelf here, this thick, okay? Everything is
Mhm.
ever written about prayer. I just camped on prayer for like a year. And first it's very awkward, because if there's something that you're not good at, then you become better and better and better. And it took me like a year to go, okay, I've got this. I understand the key things, and I'm retooled. And at some point, I even went. I just had so much lack of clarity in certain areas that I once went to a monastery for 3 days, and I was just silent for 3 days, just being alone. And what I love is that all of these things were major tectonic shifts that then fed into a complete new renewal, revival, a new season of success, flourishing. All kinds of really cool things happened that we did together, or planting a church, or starting a nonprofit, and all this stuff happened from that macro retooling that took time. And I think when people don't do that, it's because they feel guilty, they feel shame, perhaps they don't feel, maybe they feel a little impatient, you know. But you owe it to yourself. Look, if you want to lead a great life, you have, you're. I was 40. I have maybe another 40 to go. Like I want to make this thing count. It's worth stopping. It's worth doing a macro recalibration of sorts, right? And that could be sabbaticals, learning a spiritual discipline. It could be getting coaching or mentorship from over somebody, and in an area that you really need to, and you have to be patient. And it's hard to be patient when you're a grown up and you're highly functional. Let's put it that way. But the previous macro retooling for me was in relationships. I was in my 20s, and I was like, I need to find a wife. I don't know how to even start with that, right? And it took me almost 4 years to find Deb, and I thank God for the 4 years, because I just wasn't ready before that. I was retooling, right?
Mhm.
So how did you experience some of this stuff?
Well, I think it's interesting. I had a lot of the same things. I think I had my midlife crisis in my about the actually. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Kind of in the
Hmm.
same time frame in my 40s, but I think that it's related somewhat. I think the question that I mean, so for me, I think the key was sort of shifting.
Hmm.
Let me back up. The saying that you're a product of the five people around you that are your best friends, right? Your
Right.
closest five people. I
Yeah.
think sometimes you have to shift your communities. You have to shift. Like for
True.
me, that's what happened is that I actually changed cities. I
Mm-hmm.
went from New York City. I'd been in New York City for 25 years, right? And
Yeah.
it just become unhealthy. I've been there long enough, and had some major disruptions in my life, and decided I just need to go somewhere where I can kick around in my boots. And I think for about 5 years, I ate breakfast tacos, wake surfed, and just I had to down regulate, downshift. I felt like I'd been running so hard for
Mm-hmm.
so long, and so I think that's why I needed. I just got to a point where the self awareness. I think I realized that I'm running on vapors, and I needed to change cities. I needed
Yeah.
to change who I hung out with.
Mm-hmm.
So for a period of time, I tried to. It's always hard as you get older to find new friends. I think that you had at the level of friends that you might have had in a place you've spent a long time. So if you go to a new city, you're going to, by nature, have to establish new relationships, and or when you change communities. And so I think those two things, were critical to be able to then start thinking about intentionally setting my communities. And so I was invited to come to the church that you started, right? The
Yeah.
tribe.
Yeah. Jim
And
Prather, right? Jim Prather invited
yeah,
you?
with Jim way back, and then ultimately, he was like somebody I was kind of working with in his effort at Brain Health. And yeah, so Jim and I had known each other for years, and invited me to this new into a new community in Austin, which was called the Tribe. And it was great. I met some new friends right away, so it just shifted everything, right, from my old communities, my old city, my old place, even in Austin, the people that I hung out with a new community. And I think that was a real. So for me, I think when you're talking about big macro shifts, you've got to think about changing
Mm-hmm.
your environments, right? And that can be your social environments, it can be your physical environments, it can be that which is causing you, the we get these patterns that we've just done the same thing over and over again, right? How do you break out? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think people feel really depressed when they feel like there's no hope.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah.
hope is a big thing, right? And if you're just not feeling any hope right now,
Mm-hmm.
rethink everything, rethink your geography, rethink your people, rethink, think about what is it going to take to really get
Yeah.
a fresh start, right? I think I was less thoughtful than you were. I think in my mind, I'm like the guy that just tries a bunch of things to see what works. I wasn't probably proactive thinking.
Yeah.
I wasn't that good. I just had to try something different, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. And so I mean, I think sometimes the sad thing is we keep doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different outcome.
That's right. Yeah. I think one of the things that I remember with you, like I even remember where we were. There was a coffee shop on Barton Springs across from the coffee house, from the old coffee house that shut down, like maybe like a juice place. And we were like, there's like these garden benches.
Juice
And
land, yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And you were very preoccupied about finding a wife. And you,
I
you,
didn't realize that. Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
you were
Yeah, so
alone.
that's another shift, right? That's another relation. That's
Yeah,
another, yeah.
because you were already like on your way up on all kinds of levels, and then you're like, I don't have anyone, like I don't see anything like that on the horizon, right?
Right,
And
right.
I just so you had this one area, and I would tell you, I'm like, just trust the process. Trust the process. Go deep. You're gonna go high. Don't worry about it. It's gonna happen. I promise you. I don't know where it's gonna happen. I don't know when it's gonna happen, but you will trust the process, and you're gonna
Yeah,
find someone really remarkable. But when you're in the thick of it, that's sort of what I'm addressing, is that you are lonely and you feel that need, that pain point. I had that like earlier in my life as well. Same thing. It took me like 4 years, right? And I'm like going on dates and looking around and going, I don't even I don't like, the radar is empty. Like there's no beeps anywhere, right? So what's going on? And what it means is that the instrument is not attuned. You're not even prepared to see. Basically, that's sort of what I'm saying, right? I had that, and I saw that with you as well. And it's the same thing with other areas of life. So being
hmm
in good company, like the five people that you're around, that's a good thing. For me, a lot of it had to do with, I would go to conferences like completely alone, like not with a crew, but I wanted an ecosystem that I can just plug in and see what the radar brings out.
Mhm.
And to me, that it
It's
would
like new
switch
input,
something.
new
Yeah,
information. Yeah.
completely new.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just exposure to new signals, new ideas, things like that. I would do that as well. So some of it is internal, some of it is external. The internal, actually, to your point of moving, I think your moving was probably healthy. One of the signs of burnout is geographical escape,
Mm.
right? And that can be a healthy thing, but for me it was unhealthy. So I remember being just feeling super stuck. We were back in Los Angeles at the time, and I would just be restless, and my joy is gone. I'm disoriented. I'm not clear on where I'm going, I just remember, I think I've quoted that incredible one liner over and over again many times. I would go to Deb, and I said to Deb, I'm like, why don't we just go somewhere? Like, and it's like, I didn't know back then that that's like a sign of burnout, right? And it's totally like phase 3 of burnout is escape
Yeah. Escapism.
geographically,
Right.
escapism. And I'm like, why don't we just sell the house? We have this really pretty house in LA. Why don't we sell the house and go somewhere and have an adventure? I remember like being all excited. I'm like, she's gonna be fired up about this, and she looks at me and she goes, honey, I think you need to have an adventure within. And and I just and I remember being stunned, like completely stunned by this answer. Like it was like she's like a prophet into my life. And I'm like, oh Lord, I feel so bad right now. You're totally right. And I've never forgotten that one
That's funny.
conversation that I had. Like, you know what? Adventure within. Why don't you try that first? That was
That's
fantastic, man.
awesome.
That was
Yeah, like
fantastic.
I had spent 25 years in New York City. Now you talk about a country boy that moved to New York City. I think
Wow.
7 years is the idea. If you're listening and you say you want to go to New York, don't spend
Yeah.
more than 7 years. You become a local, and then you get all kinds of attitude, and your stress goes up, and it's just the New York way.
Yes.
And so,
Exactly.
I mean, I lived through 9/11, and I mean everything that we had, and the blackouts, and Wall Street, and the meltdowns, and oh my gosh, it was just enough. And so I think that there is something to be said for being proactive. I think is the key. It's not so much whether you need a
Yeah.
geography change or not, but are you proactive, right? Both
Yeah.
of us, I think, were proactive, at least in the way that we knew to find,
Yeah.
experience some
At least
new
we're not
people, new
settling.
input.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that we were not able. We just couldn't exist in that state. We knew there was something wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
I think that's the adventure within is a good one. But I think to be very practical, if you want to grow in the inner game, right? If you want to grow, whether it be spiritual or whether it just be your performance, right? You have to get around people who have already
Yeah.
exude that, right?
100%.
It's not rocket science. You have to find people that are happy,
Yeah.
and then
Exactly. You
you
want to
have
be
to
happy?
imitate it.
Yeah.
There was a guy in the gym just this morning. I know this guy. I mean, you know who I'm talking about. This a guy that's just very,
Is that the young
very,
guy who wanted
very
to have a?
fit. Yeah, I don't want to say any names, but he's very fit and he's very strong. A great guy,
Yeah.
and I can just tell he's trying it all, and it's just not working there. And so and it's he came up to me and told me about a movie or whatever, recommendation, and some people see the light, see that something that's different. They can't grasp it because it's so different than what they are
Yeah. Yeah.
experiencing
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
But let me just encourage you, try it. You'll like it. It's like, go somewhere where you see that light in
Yeah.
people and the joy, right? And then just
Uh-huh.
ask them, right? Like it's
Proactive. Be
it's
proactive. Yeah.
you've got to be proactive and
I
seek. I mean, you've got to
I
go
I
after it, right?
I literally had a conversation, half an hour conversation yesterday with a friend of mine who is going through a breakup, and he's just heartbroken around it. And
Mm.
he's hang all and I was telling him, I'm like, dude, you're hanging out only with single people. If you want to get married, go hang out with married people. And for him, it was sort of awkward because I'm like, well, I don't know what to talk to them about. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be in the same season of life, or in the same level of success professionally or whatever. Go seek out people that are there where you want to be. When I was in my 20s, that's exactly what I did. And I don't know if it was
Yeah.
intuitive or I'm just shameless that way, but I would like not hang out people in my season of life at all. Like I just didn't. I would seek out people who are married because I wanted to find, I wanted to know how to find a wife, marry a great woman, and then make
Mm.
sure I keep her because all of my I have 3 generations of broken homes, and I'm like, that's the one thing I don't want is divorce. So I would just literally seek out. I had 2 or 3 friends, 2 or 3 couples that I would just make myself be in their presence. I'll be like the third wheel, like they're having a family dinner, and then me, and I'll be like, so okay, tell me how you knew she was the one. Like it was that kind of. I would
It's
just torture
awesome.
them,
It's great. Yeah.
and and I don't know why. I think it was just a level of desperation or something like that. But my point is that was the best move ever because it gave me like a shortcut to success. And they would just download. They'll be happy to. They'll like, oh, let me tell you, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you some stories, illustrations, things like that. It was so good, and it equipped me for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life, I just
Mm.
knew there's like this set of tools or principles that were downloaded and assimilated and integrated that I used, and I still use them. But I think we are so we get into this survival mode. We separate ourselves from people, and we don't just like go and say, you have what I need, I want that, how can I hang out with you more? Like
Yeah.
what are the circumstances, what are the sort of, how can we make a contract, social
Yeah.
contract or something that I'll be around you and that's it.
It's funny, by nature, we just keep on doing the same thing that we know, don't
Yeah,
we?
exactly. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Until we wake up, something, maybe it's a podcast or a webcast, or maybe it's something where you see somebody, you have to ask those questions. But I think we have to learn. This is really that going back to your original sensing what's going on. If there's a lack of joy, if there's a lack of fulfillment, if there's a lack of relationship,
Yeah.
then, like do something. Like for me, I think I was thinking about that time we were on that bench, right? And I think it was less than 2 years later, I was married.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But
And
at the
it's
time,
like
you just don't know.
to a
Yeah.
great person,
It-
right? And
oh my
tremendous
gosh. I
woman.
mean,
And it's like, how would you, and I think you set me up. You set me up. Well, you had me set up with people from Russia to
I
LA. I mean,
did.
it was really funny in San Francisco, and they were great people, right? But it doesn't mean like, so I built some new relationships, but at the end of the day, you just had to be proactive. I think that's the thing, and I had to go deep. So ultimately, the work that you were helping me do, and I was working on, helped build the foundation that helped
Yeah.
me to be somebody that once the right person showed up, I was ready. And I think you and I have that in common. The person might show up, but if you're not ready,
Oh, you're not going to be able to see or recognize the person either.
yeah, and they're not going to be looking at you as somebody that's trade up in
Exactly.
life,
You're not
in
going to,
life,
yeah, you're not going to be a good candidate, basically.
Oh man, but
So,
I listen to so many single people that I've seen that are single and they complain about not wanting to be married or not finding someone. Everybody's like, there's no, like, it's classic, women tell me that there's no good guys out there, and the women are like, there's no, and then the guys are like, there's no good women out there, and I'm just like, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. I mean, the people are the people, and at the end of the day, it's just about
yeah.
you. So
And
it's that
it's
looking at,
simply not true, but it feels true. And
yeah,
that's those
oh
both things are at this coexisting, right?
yeah,
Like, how can you possibly say there's no guys out there or girls out there if you live in Austin where there's like a million people? There's literally a million people here, right? Of course, it's
yeah.
not true,
But
but
your
it feel
experience,
yeah,
right?
your perception. You feel this sense of scarcity, this sense of loss, this
Yeah,
sense of I just don't know how to connect. That's really the essence. Is I don't know what I'm looking for, and then I don't know how to connect and find out, right? I don't have metrics. I don't have instilled software to actually see the person, which actually brings me sort of to our third talking point today, very, very beautifully and organically, which is how do you go higher, further, and faster, right? And we can even start. Let's use romance as the starting point, and then we can go into professional stuff as well, right?
oh man.
Because for me, I mean, I say that to single people all the time, and most people don't listen to me, and that's totally fine. I'm going to just preach it, right? Is once I've downloaded a set of values, changed my character, my lens, my view of the world changed about women. just by being around people that who I learned from, and by spiritual development and all of that, right? I just had to like cleanse my palate. And then I had a set of,
Exactly.
it's like settings, it's like software settings. And I remember the moment where I met Deb. It was 4 years in. I was single. Then I dated one girl very briefly, and it was like there's no sexual involvement or anything like that. So like when we parted ways, it was not messy. And But I was single the most time, and there were moments like you and I described where I was like, am I gonna ever find someone? I'm going on dates here and there, but there's like zero chemistry, zero connection. I just don't see it happening. And and then I met Deb, and I was in Los Angeles with this. It was called the Upside Down Club. There's a mixer before a conference, and she came up to me, asking me for my information, because I was performing, speaking, that sort of thing. And I remember looking at her, and as if my software, my internal my radar identified her. Like it was very surreal because it was like, huh, who are you? And yeah, it was that obvious. It was like almost like there was a soundtrack playing to it, like in a rom com. And I'm like, hey, so tell me about yourself and things like that. And I literally, there was
How
such
you
clarity.
doing?
How you doing? Right? There's so much clarity that I actually had friends, because I was caring about, I was trying to set up you on dates, and I have people like that around me as well. I had like 3 dates set up. No, I think I had 2 dates set up with someone else, other people one I knew and the other one I didn't. And I
And I
literally,
guarantee you had a network of people working for you.
absolutely 100%.
See,
Yeah. By then
you
I
were
had like a
smart. You
network.
use leverage. Like, yeah,
Oh,
it
totally.
makes sense, right? Get people around you that know you.
So I
Get some feelers
basically,
out.
because I had this level of clarity with her, first I accessed the network, and found somebody who knew her and say, hey, tell me about this girl. And they were like,
Hmm.
she's awesome. I'm like, great. Cancel the dates. Let's cancel those 2 dates that I had. Let's focus on this one. And the rest is history. It was so evident, and it was so smooth, and it was just as if it was love at first sight level stuff.
And this woman moved halfway around the world for
She
you,
did,
which is
yeah,
amazing,
which is
right?
amazing.
Think about it. She made sacrifices that most people wouldn't make.
Oh, absolutely,
Um,
100%.
it's amazing.
But I think this is to the point of flying higher, further, and faster. Is you do the work, and you will fly. You really
Mm,
will. And I come from 3 generations of broken homes. I've been married in September. We're going to be married for 25 years, and
it's great.
our marriage, and it's an awesome marriage. Okay,
Yeah.
so none of those, like all of those generational dysfunctions, all of that trauma, all of that junk that I carried with me, none of that is present in our marriage.
Hmm.
And it's because of the sort of
It's a
recalibration,
miracle.
retooling. It is a miracle, and obviously there's supernatural there, 100%. But I think the fly higher, further, and faster, that's the thing. That's why you do the work that we talk about doing, is because it just takes you somewhere on autopilot. And we can talk about the business side of things as well. But what do you think of that?
Yeah, no, I think that's where we should end. I think you're in such a good. I mean, love is in the air. It's a
Yeah.
good place to like higher, further, faster. I mean, it's interesting because there's different stages, right, that we go through, and
Hmm.
that's why I almost think like liftoff. Like when you're like think about
Yeah.
blasting off to the moon. There's just baggage you need to let go of, and there's transformation and the
Hmm.
chrysalis, right, effect that's needed. But in all those things, to me, there's internal sensitivities you have to know where you're at in the stages. And then there's the second thing, which you've just established, is the relationships you have to have around you. That you
Hmm.
went and checked on Deb and to see what people like, those that knew her, what did they think, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really special to have that kind of intel, if you will,
She did the same
right?
thing, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's the beauty of our
Hmm.
communities. Um, but then after you're married, it doesn't stop there, right? And
Nope.
so there's a whole tooling you have to do together, and there's
Hmm.
so much to learn in life. And the problem is we get old and die before we learn it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we
And there's
need
no
we
good
need
reason for that.
people, like we need people in our life, and I think that's the number one thing. Is like I think today the theme of today is there's you got to have people around you, and you've got to
Yeah.
be proactive, and you've got to look for new environments, new information, new places where you can get feedback, where you can get wisdom. Because I'm a little different than you. I wasn't as wise. I wasn't thoughtful as much as you were in terms of forward thinking. I was feeling. I'm more of a feeler. I
Hmm.
sense my way through it, right? And then I just hit my head on a wall and I'm like, oh, that didn't feel good. I'm going this way
Yeah,
until
yeah,
I find my way out, right? But it's relationships that actually helped invite me to places where I can get better information and get things solved. So to me, further, faster, higher is all about the foundation that have
yeah.
the support from this, and the support that you have, not just the foundation, which is great, but you have to have support like scaffolding along the way as you build your life.
Well, why don't we do this? And I want to sort of, so we will land on love. I think that's a good idea because we don't have space right in the hour. But I would love to do going higher, further, faster professionally,
Okay.
like going from strength to strength,
What
where
you
there's
love, how
where
about
there's
that?
leveraging professionally in the next in our next Headspace
Okay,
Live.
next time.
Yeah, but I think with love, what you were saying, one thing that really helped me after I met Deb is that we had this one couple, and they were also sort of intercultural, interracial, so to say. And we got with them before we got married. We got with them every other week for months, and they would teach us like blow by blow. She said this, and I said that, and it makes me feel this, and da 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 da. And it was training. It was hands-on training pre-marriage. And then after marriage, we got together in sort of generally that same rhythm for 2 whole years, 2 years.
It's
So
amazing.
pre and post. And what that did for us, I cannot, like, every time I talk to them or message, I express my gratitude because this is like foundational stuff that then lasts for a lifetime.
Well, you pass it on down too, so that investment that couple made has been, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
has paid dividends, over the years.
Exactly. And it's just so wonderful. And that's sort of your first stage. So we'll talk about professionally how that works. But this is the thing. You make a change, you adopt a principle, and you start succeeding on autopilot. And that's the goal. It's how do you succeed without trying harder, essentially, right? By doing the right thing at the right moment and making the right changes. And I think it's just one of the beautiful secrets of success in life is that, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that foundation, everything is external, right? Your internal game is the game that really drives everything externally,
Yeah.
and so first things first kind of thing. I was pretty good at the outward game at times,
Hmm.
but not didn't have the training. Didn't wasn't raised with anyone that really had that kind of internal experience and expertise, right?
Yeah.
And so that's huge. And so now as we get older, right, we have plenty of career choices and things that we could do professionally. But what's nice about it is that inner game is really the thing that helps provide the guidance. I think no matter what we're going to do professionally, it's going to look like this personally, and set good boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Professionally,
Yeah.
you have to have boundaries and know what those are, right?
Hmm.
Like I wouldn't move away to another city because I have relationships here, right?
Hmm.
And I wouldn't, there's just things I wouldn't do now. And so that's part of what I keep going back to this theme of, I think, setting yourself up to win, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, let's land the plane here. So, guys, if you're listening to this, thank you for tuning in either live or later. Thanks for your comments. We see them, by the way, and we respond to them. And I really want to promote a couple of things, a couple opportunities. If you like this content, you're going to like this. So one of them is exponentiallife.score, is that link to the self-assessment that gives you a very granular view of yourself that you can take and actually make some decision based on that. And the other one is christianrayflores.com is the newsletter that goes out every Sunday morning. Actually, it goes out twice a week now because I'm publishing a new book chapter by chapter on Wednesdays. So today's the next chapter. But I'm not going to do it forever. The main newsletter drops on Sunday mornings, and it's usually a collection of stuff that I found, these episodes that we record, and other resources just to help you flourish as a human being. and have your mission flourish because of it. So if you're interested, christianrayflores.com is where you sign up. We have over now 11,000 subscribers on that thing. So
It's awesome.
it's pretty cool. Thanks again for joining us, Brandon. As always, you're the man, and I love hanging out with you. And we're planning to do more of these. Let's do the going higher, further, faster next time. And we also have some really good guests lined up in the near future. So stay tuned for that.